Hello, my name's Ajay and you're watching The Defining Moment for creating the culture of conscience. Today we're happy to be joined by John O'Neill of the Morality Forum. The Morality Forum was established in 1996 in the UK, and John has been one of its key pioneers ever since. He was married 27 years ago and is now the proud father of 5. John, thank you for joining us on The Defining Moment.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, today's topic is about the conscience of the nation. But before we get into that, can you please share with us a defining moment from your life?
Yeah, well, in relation to that topic of conscience, I can give a very clear example, actually. I had a very profound spiritual experience with God when I was 18 years old. And that has been like the guiding point of my whole life. That's why I'm involved in these issues. As I say, I had a number of very clear experiences where God became very real to me. And so this, I would say, was a real defining moment in my life, absolutely. And
what happened, and how old were you at that time?
I was 18, I was a Roman Catholic. At that point, although I went to church, it was just out of duty, really. And I suddenly became very serious. I really wanted to know if this was real or if it was just figment of whatever. So actually I remember very clearly going to the confessional in the Catholic Church and being very serious, very sincere. And I came out, I received the Holy Communion, and I immediately felt this incredible love in my heart. And on a number of occasions I went home, I laid down on my bed, to go to sleep, and also this incredible love, like in every cell in my body. And I knew this was not, I wasn't imagining this. I knew God was revealing himself to me through this, actually. It was a very profound experience. And also over the years, I've had answers to prayers, certain other spiritual experiences. So this is what underlies my, involvement in these moral issues. This, as you put it, this key defining moment was clearly for me. God really revealed himself to me, absolutely, through this experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that, John. Yeah. Well, let's get on to today's topic, the conscience of the nation. Well, first of all, how would you describe the state of morality in the UK today?
Well, as regards sexual matters and family matters, I think it's terrible, absolutely terrible. And of course, there are many good people in our nation doing wonderful charity work and various other good acts. But the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is sexual morality and family values. And those are in disarray at the moment, especially because, unfortunately, our government is even directly legislated against those values. So, unfortunately, I think it's in disarray.
Well, then, who's responsible? I mean, at the moment, who are the key moral groups, the established moral groups out there?
Yeah, there are a number of them. Media Watch UK, Family and Youth Concern, Christian Voice, Media March, and they all do wonderful work, actually, but they all need many more people to support them. But they whenever there's some moral issue arises, they're giving quotes, they go onto the radio, speak onto the television, and they do great work, but they all need much more support,
Now, those groups you quoted, obviously they're the modern day groups, and if you go back, obviously, a generation or two, there's the Mary Whitehouse phenomenon.
That is now actually Media Watch UK. It was at that time National Viewers and Listeners Association. It's now called Media Watch UK.
Oh, so it evolved and changed its image.
Yes.
But I do remember, and perhaps it's even the case today, and this is actually my next question, that it was always associated, let's say, with old people, old fogies, and people who didn't have really, let's say, a real kind of in-touch experience of what's really going on in the world. Now, that must be a concern for you. Why do you think it is that young people are just not getting involved?
Yeah, very good question. And I think it's very clear. The answer to me is absolute. I think, I gave you my example of the fact, I think the fundamental problem in our society today is we have to get God back into the heart of the society. The government should be legislating according to the moral and spiritual laws which are there for our well-being and protection. For instance, a study by D.H. Unwin from Cambridge University of 88 civilizations showed whenever promiscuity, same-sex relationships, infidelity was rampant, within 3 generations, the whole lot was wiped out. And also, So actually, when I was a boy in this country, there was a Christian ethos was prevalent, and we had very little crime. Divorce was rare. Teenage pregnancies were very rare. You could walk the streets safely at night. Now, since the 1950s, moral and spiritual values have been in constant decline. Constant decline. There's been a tenfold increase in crimes and enormous increases in social problems. So it's not just like some vague, does God exist? All the evidence, those moral and spiritual laws are contained in all the religions actually. So history shows conclusively, whenever we ignore those laws, it spells disaster for our society. So as I say, as a boy growing up, there was a Christian ethos was prevalent. So that's why I give my life to these issues, because I've seen the other side. I've seen the other side of the coin, actually. When we really have these prevalent in society, it's the opposite happens to what's going on today. So the so-called permissive 60s, the sexual revolution has been an absolute disaster for our nation, an absolute total disaster. And, the media often portray the sexual relationship like it's a recreational sport. No boundaries, no moral restraints. So in other words, freedom actually comes within responsibility, living according to the moral and spiritual. So actually it's very simple, really. It's very simple when we really understand that these values have come from our Creator. Our Creator's there, and they've stood the test of time, as all the evidence shows. So, as I say, once the permissive 60s came in, that was the start of our decline. And we're reaping the rewards today, unfortunately.
But again, I mean, my question is just, why are young people not involved? I mean, as I was saying, it seems like organizations like yours and Media Watch, they're not in tune with young people, and it's often young people who are the main focus of your concern, and they themselves are not really willing, or not many anyway, to get involved in the cause itself, to take on the decline of morality. So why is it that they're just not prepared to do that? Or it seems like they're not. I mean, maybe it's
you're right, actually, you're absolutely right, but I think it's very clear, because they receive all the wrong messages from the media and from advertisers. As I say, the media often portrays the sexual relationship as in a promiscuous way. Yet actually it should be the most holy act of love between a man and a woman, an eternal commitment based on the moral and spiritual laws, living for the sake of the higher purpose, for the good of all mankind, for the good of each other, and producing children. But look at like the James Bond films, for instance. The guys having relationships, sexual here, there, and everywhere. In the soap operas, violence is often the way to solve problems. They're all actually, there's been a 60% increase in foul language on TV in recent years, and ever increasing levels of sex and violence. Actually, so in other words, our young people receive all the wrong messages.
Okay.
And also, if you remember, many of those young people now, their parents grew up in the permissive 60s. And so, in other words, a whole generation has grown up without any moral and clear spiritual guidance for their lives, actually. That's the real answer.
Okay, following on from that, in your opinion, what has had the most devastating effect on the morals of the nation?
Well, there's been a gradual decline in standards. Could I quote something here?
Yes,
May I
please
quote
do.
something which I think will sum it up for you? It's a letter I had published in one of my local papers, which I think sums it up. Before World War II, moral values were signalled not only by leaders in their personal behaviour, but by many laws and social policies which reflected a Christian view of what was right and proper. This was because the people framing those policies actually held those views and could safely assume that others did too. After the war, all this changed rapidly. An intellectual culture arose, particularly in the social sciences and associated professions, which quite explicitly abandoned Christian values. It also declared that holding any values at all, and thereby the making of moral judgments, was no business of theirs or the state's. This culture came to hold considerable power by dominating the many government advisory bodies. The Law Commission, established in 1965, being a classic example. It was this which destroyed censorship and gave us abortion and divorce on demand. It abolished discipline in schools, gave free contraceptives to unmarried and underage youngsters, and fostered amoral sex education on innocent young children. All young and old need to realise that unless moral and spiritual values are predominant in our society, we will continue to suffer from ever-increasing levels of crimes and social problems.
So there's been a gradual decline in terms of the standards and the examples that our leaders have actually upheld.
Exactly, yes.
And then a kind of downturn in terms of the significance or the importance of those values in the first place.
I come back to my point, AJ. We have to understand, I think, that these laws our Creator's given us are absolute laws, and they have absolutely stood the test of time. It's not moralising or being religious. We're just talking about facts. There are only one set of absolute laws, governing human conduct. And as I say, again, I made the point, those laws have absolutely stood the test of time, and we ignore them at our peril. All the evidence shows this.
So do you think, as a society, that we are now at a breaking point?
I think, yes. In fact, I was at a meeting the other week. Miranda Soot from Media March, a wonderful moral campaigner, she made the point that what's happening with the media in our society at this moment in time, they will destroy our society. I think there is a lot of truth in that, actually. There's a lot of truth in that.
Destroy our society?
Yeah. Because the way they promote immorality, history, as I quoted to you earlier, this study by D.H. Unwin, whenever immorality becomes rampant in any society, eventually that society self-destructs. So as I mentioned, we've had a tenfold increase in crimes since the 1950s, enormous increases in social problems. So this is the reality. This is the reality.
That sounds very dramatic, but what do you think can be done then to hold back this decline, this moral decay? I mean, not just the sex and the violence, the drugs that you've already mentioned, but just, let's say, the everyday misery that you find in society.
Well, the core message at the heart of all religious teaching is to live for the sake of others. So, as I say, from my point of view, we have to get religious values prominent again in society. The government should be legislating according to the moral and spiritual laws. So, I give one example, like divorce, for instance. Imagine in a house, if a husband and a wife are truly living for the higher purpose, for the good of all mankind, and for the sake of each other, truly doing that, divorce is not possible. Divorce isn't possible. So as I say, the key point is we have to get these values predominant again. The government absolutely should be legislating according to those values. That's absolutely vital.
And in that direction, do you think the government are on your side?
I think the government at the moment are not on our side at all. I think they're the opposite, actually. They've brought in legislation directly against traditional family values. They do nothing. We urgently need an obscenity law in this country, a strong obscenity law. They put all the responsibility onto the media regulatory bodies, and they usually come up with a kind of terminology, well, the most blatant, offensive, harmful, immoral things that are being pushed onto us on our TV screens, and they say, well, is this going to cause widespread offence and complaint? So in other words, if just a handful of people respond, then they think, well, it doesn't really matter. So this is why, as I say, we have to really, this is why one of my main points about my work, actually, I'm trying to encourage all religious people, again we come back to the point, to be like, we should be actually the conscience of the nation. If we don't respond, who will? So this is, as I say, all religious people, when this kind of stuff, because it's in the heart of all religious teachings, immorality is looked upon as the greatest sin, especially adultery. So when it's portrayed, as I say, in the media as a recreational sport, we have to voice our concerns. Many more, thousands of people should be doing this, and then absolutely it will make a huge difference to our society.
If you consider, John, even if we had the most exemplary leaders, it's probably fair to say that human beings would still keep on making mistakes.
Absolutely, yes.
So does that just make them bad?
No, I think we all make mistakes. I'm certainly not a perfect human being, absolutely. But I think the main point, AJ, the main point we absolutely have to understand is that, you know, the family values, marriage and family, is the bedrock upon which stability in society depends. So, like, as I say, when I was a boy, if a minister in the government had an affair, they would automatically resign. Now they just disappear for a few weeks, then they're back with, you know, in their key positions again. So, as I say, this is the most fundamental point. Of course, we all make mistakes, but that particular issue, you know, like infidelity, that has brought down nations and societies, and that should be actually so clear, you know, to these people that if they do make a mistake in that area, it absolutely should be a resigning offence, because it sends out all the wrong messages. Our young people are being inundated. Look at the way, like in the sex education in schools, for instance. You know, they're told, you know, if they become pregnant, they can just take the morning after pill, or they can just go and have an abortion. You know, can I quote something about abortion?
Please do.
Yeah, this is a clear example, actually, of just how appalling what's going on, of the reality. It was actually Mother Teresa who said, "If a mother can kill her own child, we should not be surprised when people kill us." So, Department for Health Statistics for abortion in 2005 indicate a total of 186,416 babies were aborted in England and Wales. More than 1,000 teenagers had repeat abortions. 1,316 girls under 18 had an abortion for a second time, and 90 went through a third. The figures also showed that by the end of last year, 44 women had had 8 or more abortions. 20 of these women being under 30. Simon Blake, Chief Executive of the Youth Abortion and Contraception Advice Service, Brooke, blamed the situation on the education and health systems. A counsellor for the pro-life charity Life has commented on the high number of abortions, including repeat abortions among teenagers. Michaela Aston said, "This is a failure of the sex education strategy that has been forced on girls of this age for more than 10 years. It's bad enough for teenage girls to be having one abortion, let alone repeated abortions, and they are obviously not being protected against the epidemic of sexually transmitted diseases. Girls tell me they no longer have a defence against having sex because of the overwhelming pressure from those promoting pills and condoms." Now, if I just may quote what actually, this is the most horrifying part of what I'm going to say here. This is what really abortion does, actually. This is from the Human Life League. Researchers established that once out of denial and trying to justify the abortion, innumerable post-abortive women will suffer guilt, remorse, grief, anxiety and eating disorders, suicides, depression, low self-esteem, difficult relationships, despair, anger, inability to forgive oneself, etc. And I'll just finish on this topic, if I may, with just one letter which I think says it all, really, about this issue. This is a letter that was published in the Daily Mail a couple of years ago by a sister of a lady who had an abortion. This is the sister. "In the abortion debate, insufficient consideration is given to the effects on the woman who has had the procedure. Before having an abortion 36 years ago, my sister was a successful secretary. After it, she became very introverted and disturbed. She's been in and out of mental hospitals and has been sectioned several times. How I wish there had been an advisor around at the time to suggest adoption instead. Things haven't changed very much today. The first recommendation for any unwanted pregnancy is still to abort. How many more lives is abortion ruining, such as my sister's? The cost of such treatment is hidden within the massive NHA budget." So, you know, these kind of issues, AJ, this, as I say, this of the media feeling that they have no boundaries. Often, a lot of this stuff is done in the name of so-called art, freedom of expression, and exploring. But in reality, the sad reality is they're destroying our society.
Okay, John. On the other hand, human beings are actually capable of extraordinary acts of compassion and service, as well as obviously all these bad examples that you've just given us. My question is, John, on whose morality are you basing your judgments on? Is it just a voice inside your head?
No, as I explained earlier, I've come to understand we have a living creator, and all the evidence from studies shows clearly these moral and spiritual laws, which are contained within all the religions, have been handed down from right from the start of history. All these laws are there, and so it's a case of realizing that you either, well, the bottom line is you either believe it or you don't. For me, I've got not one iota of doubt at all, because I've had clear spiritual experience. I know that God exists, and also, as I say, I don't think it'd be more conclusive than the study by D.H. Unwin of 88 civilizations. It's not just his studies, also other historians have had similar studies. And the bottom line is, again, whenever we ignore these moral and spiritual laws, it spells disaster for any society. So it's up to each individual. Of course, as each individual has his choice to make. But for me, I think it is totally conclusive. Totally conclusive, as in it for myself, the fact I've come to know God exists, and also the historical evidence, I think, is also totally conclusive.
So your judgments, you're saying, are based on a conscience that speaks from universal values?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so on that point, who is the conscience of the nation?
Well, it should be the religious people. We should be the conscience of the nation. We should be in the centre of the society. Setting the example. As I say, this is why these moral groups, they are in the main taking the responsibility. Unfortunately, many religious people, for one reason or another, they don't take that initiative or don't understand the seriousness, or they just want to live a quiet life. For myself, as I say, what drives me is because I had profound spiritual experiences. I study all the evidence, as I say, it's absolutely, totally clear for me. And as I say, we should be the conscience of the nation. Whenever these issues arise, we should make our voice here politely, courteously, not to judge people, but to hopefully, they can understand what they are doing is not correct, and it shouldn't be happening.
Well, finally, John, you're obviously very passionate about your work with the Morality Forum. If others want to find out what you're doing now and how they can get involved, if they could possibly support, what do they need to know?
Well, we can give you our email address, which is moralityforum@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And we're dealing with issues at the moment. I'm giving presentations about Morality Forum. I've been in a mosque recently, in a Christian church. And, we send our update to key political people, religious leaders, and we're getting some very good feedback. As I say, we support supporting the various moral groups, and especially encouraging people to write letters, and especially also I've spoken on national radio quite a few times, local radios, any outlets that we can, to get our views across. I think it's vitally important. That I think many, especially religious people, we don't maybe perhaps realise how God can use us, to change things for the good. So as I say, if people like to contact me, we'll be very happy to come and explain more, arrange some presentation, and also another thing that we do, I think it's important, if I'd like to mention, we have leaflets on all the key moral issues: sex education, abortion, homosexuality, media issues, where we have all facts and statistics, which whenever I write a letter, I enclose these. And it can be a letter actually written from a principled point of view with sincerity and conviction can actually move people. I've had famous people in the media actually apologise for, using promiscuous words. Not that I'm accusing them, I'm just politely pointing it out. And somehow...
Being that voice in their head, that conscience.
Yes, exactly. There's something inside them that they know. Yes, so I've had a number of cases. It's very heartening to get a response like that from key people in the media, because, so as I say, I think many times ordinary people, we don't realise, they'll just throw it in the bin. But I think our responsibility as religious people is to tell people the truth, sincerely, not just politely pointing it out. Then I believe we've done our job, and at some point, if they don't listen, I don't wish this upon anybody, but I think at some point then God will judge them. But it's our response as a conscience of the nation, politely point it out, and that's our responsibility, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Good luck in your endeavours.
Thank you very much, Ajay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you've been watching The Defining Moment for creating the culture of conscience. If you'd like to find out more, you can look us up on the web at www.definingmoment.eu. Thank you for watching, and we wish you all the best.